Hello and welcome to the presentation Our Journey to Play in the Early Years with a Focus on Literacy. I have used a play-based approach to enhance and support learning in Primary 1 and Primary 2 classrooms. I have been involved in a 3-year journey developing play at Newton Grange Primary School, where we have changed the structure of our early years to ensure that we have an effective learning environment for all of our learners. I have developed spaces in my classroom to ensure that learners have experiences of all areas of the curriculum. We have had particular focus on reason attainment and literacy, and therefore developed play experiences to ensure reinforcement and progression within literacy. Through collaborating with Deirdre Grogan and early years practitioners from our nursery setting, we aim to ensure that all learners are actively engaging in play and challenge their thinking. Learners are provided with the opportunity to learn through inquiry and discovery, and through child-initiated play, are questioning what is known and unknown about the world. This has enabled me to develop my teaching of literacy in my classroom and provide learning opportunities that extend children's knowledge, such as fine and gross motoring skills, investigation and language, and prior phonics teaching. Over tonight's session, I will be talking about our 3-year journey developing play and how we have changed the structure of our early years to ensure an effective learning environment for all our learners. I will also be talking about our collaboration with Deirdre Grogan and how we achieved this learning environment. I will show how literacy can be incorporated through play and how this has developed my teaching of literacy in my classroom by providing opportunities that extend children's knowledge. And finally, I will discuss the impact implementing these approaches has had on our learners. I have popped in here a few quotes that really resonate with me on why play is important and why I use it in my classroom. So play gives children the chance to practice what they are learning, and play is the highest form of research. I started teaching Primary 1 in 2017. At Newton Grange, we have 3 classes within one open plan area. At the time, learners did not mix out with their own class, and as you can see from the photos, we had a seat for every child, making space and the opportunity for play very limited. Due to the lack of appropriate furniture, we were not able to provide open-ended play resources for our learners to explore. We do have a small atrium within our Primary 1 setting, and at the time, this was the only play provided. It had a sand tray, water tray, and painting easel that was used on a rota system between the 3 classes. This was not observed or recorded and was mainly only monitored by an adult for behaviour only. When teaching, I used a carousel approach, and learners did not have the opportunity to explore or investigate tasks and activities, as these were set by me with an expected outcome. This way of teaching in the early years was something that had always been done, and change to this way had not previously been explored. However, I did notice that there was inconsistencies between our ELC setting and Primary 1. Our learners had gone from a lot of free play and outdoor play to bums on seats, meaning that our learners had less opportunities to communicate with one another, be creative, and investigate. Myself and my stage partners knew we wanted to incorporate more of a play-based curriculum where each child could reach their full potential in a positive way. This was also supported by our head teacher, and from there our play journey began. We knew we wanted to change our structure, but were unsure where to start and how to achieve this. We did some research online and looked on Pinterest, and we found great ideas, but felt like it was a bit of an impossible task and we didn't really know where to start. One thing I will say now, looking back, is start off small, discuss with your colleagues exactly what you want to achieve, and make short-term goals. This is a process, and from what I know now, getting the environment right is key. From research I have read, I knew I wanted to incorporate some literacy and numeracy play. Keeping with my carousel approach, I made stations that learners could explore related to what they were learning. But again, this was teacher-led and had an unexpected outcome. Learners did not have the opportunity to be creative, imaginative, or investigate things for themselves. The play was not open-ended or kept out for more than one lesson. I had literacy tasks out during literacy time and numeracy activities out during numeracy time. This mainly included tabletop games and some of the activities that you can see in the photos. I knew I needed to continue this further in order to achieve learning through play. I visited other schools within my council and collaborated with other Primary 1 teachers, and this proved valuable in seeing what others were doing and how their learners responded to play. From this, I realised that not all learners needed a seat, and a carousel approach was not necessarily the best for Primary 1. We needed to change our environment and began working with Deirdre Grogan from Strathclyde University, who delivered twilight sessions exploring pedagogy and the young child. Through collaboration with Deirdre Grogan, we wanted to ensure that we had a consistent approach with our nursery setting and ensure our learners were actively engaged whilst providing challenge for our Primary 1s. This started with us focusing on our learning environment. We spent quite a bit of time with our nursery colleagues and discussing the areas that they had in their nursery and to create a consistent approach within Primary 1. Research showed that play has to be the first consideration when planning the learning environment in Primary 1. We acknowledge that young children learn by being active, exploring and investigating, using language and interacting with others. This was important for us to consider when changing our environment. We massively decluttered our area and removed some tables and chairs to create zones within our classroom, and mainly focused on block play, loose parts, role play and creative areas. Our main focus was to start with some open-ended resources for our learners to explore. We still adopted a carousel approach but changed it so that one of our stations was a free choice station. From what I had observed, learners were fully engaged in activities and started to ask more questions and became more independent about finding things out for themselves. The relationships between the children improved as they worked together to research and problem solve. I also started to listen to my learners more about their interests and how they'd responded to the different areas we had created. This was important for reflecting on what was going well and what we needed to adapt and make changes to. One big thing was that I had enclosed the areas for the children to play, as I wanted to limit the amount of people that were playing in each area. On reflection and through the children's feedback, this was quickly changed to allow learners to have more space to be more creative. I also had how many people can play here signs, and I find that children were more focused on the amount of people that should be in the area rather than engaging in the play, so these signs were quickly removed. Once I had made these small changes, I found that learners were making great creations, particularly in block play and loose parts, and could confidently talk about what they were doing and how they could challenge themselves making things better. I also found that when learners were faced with a problem during play, they showed more resilience and wanted to fix problems rather than give up. Due to introducing more free play, we found that our open plan area was quite noisy. Learners were fully engaged in areas and responding well with one another. It was due to the amount of learners that we had in such a small space. We decided this would be a good opportunity to introduce outdoor play. We did find this a bit of a challenge to start with due to not having a separate outdoor area for our learners and not having a door leading directly outside to our playground. Our resources were also limited. We discussed what opportunities we would want to provide for our learners, and new learners could be imaginative through loose parts. I set up a numeracy-focused palette concentrating on counting, addition and subtraction, and time. I also made a music palette to allow learners to express themselves and explore resources that were too noisy for our classrooms. We also had to figure out how we were going to manage play outside and what our structure would look like. We knew we wanted to move away from the rota system, and after discussions with Deirdre and our head teacher, we changed the structure of our numeracy teaching time. We adopted a free flow approach between our 3 classrooms and our outdoors. To manage the amount of learners we had outdoors, I made lanyards, and learners could only go outside if a lanyard became available. Our outdoor area was managed by a learning assistant. This allowed us to create a free flow approach. It meant learners could socialise with their peers out with their class and experience different areas of play. We have found that engagement was high and new friendships were being built. From observations, we could see many benefits. Our learners were leading their own learning, socialising and communicating with one another, and we also found that learners were consolidating their learning, particularly through the use of the numeracy palette. Here are some examples of learning taking place outside.
So 9 times 3 is?
5, 6.
We have now furthered this and provide outdoor loose parts play for all our learners from Primary 1 to Primary 7. Our school collaborated with Play Midlothian to make our playgrounds more of an enjoyable space for all our learners, where they could take risks and have fun and socialise with their peers. Observing this play, I could notice that my learners were excited to tell me about what they have been playing and showed confidence and resilience through their independence of thought and action from loose parts. Our outdoors is something we want to adopt further to allow learners to have independence through open-ended resources, but also having some focused teaching time and consolidating learning. This is something that we will continue to improve on. Unfortunately, due to COVID, this has had to be put on hold. By my 3rd year in Primary 1, I had visited other schools within my council and attended an upstart event, Play at Early Level, supporting health, well-being and communication. I was able to collaborate with Primary 1 and Primary 2 teachers across Scotland and visit different early years environments, both nursery and primary based. This journey to a more play-based approach has allowed me to change my learning and teaching and adopt a more child-initiated classroom. We have completely changed the structure of our Primary 1 setting. Our classrooms now are much more spacious and allow our learners to freely move around the different areas. We now have clear zones within our classrooms that learners can explore all areas of the curriculum. We ensure that our play is related to daily teaching and prior observations, which vary in complexity to ensure appropriate challenge and pace for each individual child. All our play areas work in a tandem to ensure breadth and depth across the curriculum. Each week, play and conversations are modelled by adults interacting with learners as they play. Myself and learning assistants observe play daily and record observations about children's conversations and set up play accordingly. These childlike conversations lead to set up of provocations and also teacher-led activities to help support with learning. I am now taking what we have achieved in play in Primary 1 to Primary 2 and added more appropriate challenge and some adult-directed play. Play is one of the main ways in which children learn and develop. It helps to build self-worth by giving a child a sense of their own abilities and make them feel good about themselves. Because it is fun, children often become very absorbed in what they are doing. When learners are playing, they are showing great teamwork and collaboration. I very rarely see a child playing alone. Over time, the play has become a lot more creative and the learners like to explore every resource. You can see this in the photo with the loose parts. They are very good at talking about what resources they've used and what they are building or making. We do trust our learners with risky play. However, our play is always modelled by an adult, and for our tinkering table, we have induction sessions before the child can use the hammers and saws. I always find the learners can confidently talk about what they are doing. Myself and my LA spend time interacting with the learners. It is important for us to identify teachable moments, but also try to sit back and encourage learners to respond to their peers so we can listen and support the learning and, if needed, and ask questions. I make a play plan every term, usually when we are moving on to a new concept or topic. This is displayed in the classroom and usually looks completely different by the end of the term. When observing play, I write any comments the learners have made, recording what learning is taking place, interests, and what areas the children are responding to and what areas they are not. The play is changed according to the conversations with the children and their interests. I also relate the play to what we are learning. This area is a teacher-led and has an expected outcome. This is monitored through a jigsaw with the children's names on it. The learners know they have to complete the activity at least one time during that week. This can be an activity that is whole class, or it can be differentiated depending on the ability and the learning focus. I use a floor book in my classroom to track learning, enhance language and skills, and develop vocabulary. This is always displayed in the classroom and the children can always look through it if they want. This is also displayed at Parents' Evening for parents to have a look through of our learning throughout the year. For Primary 2, I have created weekly numeracy challenges as well as the jigsaw approach. This is always related to the learning at the time and usually involves 3 activities that learners must complete. They have to sign their name when they have done the activity after showing me or posting their learning on Seesaw. My classroom is organised to provide 3 activities. A teach moment, this can be a whole class teacher input or within a group. A target input, which is quality independent learning or teacher initiated. This is either with a single child or with a small group. And a play activity. This is child initiated. I use all of these inputs in my classroom with a focus on the main areas of the curriculum. We encourage our young learners to be independent. We use a top task approach. This is for learners to choose when they want to complete their independent activity. The activity may be a worksheet, a game, or an activity using ICT. Learners find their name next to the corresponding number so they know what task to complete, and they remove their name once the activity has been completed. Tasks are differentiated and effectively target each child's needs. This helps us with children becoming much more independent and giving them choice over when they complete an activity or when they play. All of our learners can independently post their learning on Seesaw. This is a great resource and has particularly helped us through COVID. For our learners to share their learning with their parents and carers at home. I find that the learners take much more pride in their learning if they know that they are posting it home to their adults. They also voice record and talk about what they are doing and share their skills that they have used. This is also a great tool for me as a teacher to observe and record children's learning. We also encourage our children to do a self-registration in the morning. This is to stop interrupting the free flow play that is happening when they are coming through the door in the morning during their soft start. We have had a focus on raising attainment in literacy and therefore developed play experiences to ensure reinforcement and progression within literacy. I ensure that literacy play experiences are related to daily teaching and prior observations, which vary in complexity to ensure appropriate challenge and pace for each individual child. It is important to have play areas set up in your classroom so that learners can transfer their learning from one area to another. I usually set up my literacy areas based on our topics and children's interests. I encourage my learners to engage in our class library, which has a range of books that are non-fiction and fiction. And I will always take a book from this area to do our daily story. The role play area is located near to the library so that learners can take what they have learned from books and use it to retell stories and play different roles. I also always have a writing area set up, which encourages learners to write about what they have been learning or create imaginative stories. This learning is posted on Seesaw by the learners and shows how learning connects through play. As well as in my library area, I always use books in the different zones. Learners can read the books and it sparks ideas and interest to extend learners' thinking. This can be how to use art materials in different ways, ideas for building using different materials, and research. It also helps learners develop their tools for reading by reading the books, turning the pages correctly, using the pictures, beginning to read words, and skim and scan for information. This can also be used to spark provocations and engage children's thinking. Throughout our 3-year journey, we have changed our literacy programme. When I first started in Primary 1, we were using Jolly Phonics. I found that when learners were learning initial sounds, they were fully engaged in the stories and songs and could perform the actions for the sounds. However, I struggled to progress the learners to the next level of blending and using their sounds to read and write words. I also found that for a large number of our learners, they struggled to hear the middle sounds in words. After some reading online and discussions with other Primary 1 and Primary 2 teachers, we looked into adopting the Read Write Inc literacy programme. We adopted this as a whole school approach using Read Write Inc for Primary 1s to 3s and Fresh Start for our learners in Primary 4 to 7. All early years staff attended a 2-day course for Read Write Inc, which gave me an insight into how I should implement Read Write Inc into everyday teaching of phonics. I could see the teaching progression of phonics and how learners are supported through a range of resources. ELC teachers and learning assistants were also trained, which means it gave a consistent approach to teaching phonics. The comparison engagement between Jolly Phonics and Read Write Inc was massive. Learners responded well to Fred the Frog and were excited to be learning new sounds and using them to read and write words. There is a clear progression for all staff to follow, and we know exactly what we should be teaching next. We are supported by a Read Write Inc coordinator and are given guidance on how best to perform the pace of learning and how best to support our learners. I also found that a consistent routine for Read Write Inc has helped our learners stay focused, and it is a consistent approach as they progress through the years. We have adopted the programme to get it right for all our learners, and we still use a carousel approach to allow us to differentiate and get it right for every child. Our learners are able to transfer their skills into reading and writing. For our younger learners, we send ORT reading books home for reading for enjoyment, and in school we use the Read Write Inc books related to their phonics learning. For our writing, we use foundations for writing and encourage our learners to write independently without us scribing for them. Learners are able to use the Read Write Inc strategies and transfer it into writing words. We have seen a lot of positive results since changing to the Read Write Inc programme and continue to follow the programme to raise attainment. I have also delivered Read Write Inc sessions for parents, giving them an insight into the literacy programme and how they can best support their child at home. To provide more literacy in my classroom through play, I have set up a story of the week in my Tough tray. I have a different story every week and resources relating to the story set out for learners to explore. I read the book whole class 2 to 3 times a week, and learners are able to join in with the story and learn new vocabulary and rhyme through repetition. Again, using the book as they retell the story encourages practice of tools for reading. Our learners enjoy recording themselves on Seesaw and sharing with their parents and carers. An example of this is shown in this video learners posted on Seesaw independently. You can see the learners retelling and following along with the story using the resources to retell the story.
The field to catch the eagle. The shot to catch the budgie. The dog to catch the possum. The possum to catch. Where is the possum supposed to catch? Possum to catch the budgie. I don't know why she went.
It is important to allow learners to consolidate their learning through play. In this video, I will show you a group learning to blend. In the photos, you can see the learners copying these strategies as they play schools. I always have teaching resources accessible for the learners to use at all times.
Girls, are we ready? We're going to have a little practice of our sounds, okay? Have your eyes. Well done, girls. Right, so we're going to see if we can Fred talk some words. So I'm going to Fred talk it and you're going to tell me the word, okay? Are we ready? At.
Mat.
What do I need first? Good. At. Mat. Ruby, can you show me how we check?
Mat.
Good job. Excellent.
A bit sideways.
Are we ready? What's the next one? Let me see. Pot.
Pot.
Well done. Pot. Emily, can you show me how we check? Good job. Excellent. Right, now we're going to make it a little bit trickier. We're going to do the words and then Miss Hunter's going to shuffle them up and we're going to see if we can make the word. Are we ready? First word. Top. Good job. Ruby, can you make sure we've got top? Good. Right, let's shuffle them up. Emily, could you make the word top? Go see if you can make the word top. Good. Good. Can we give it a check? Good job. Right, let's try one more. Are we ready? Sit. Good job. Sit. Right, let's shuffle them up this time. Right, Ruby, could you make the word sit? Can you give it a little check? Sit. Good job. High five, girl. That was super speedy words. Good job.
This video was also shared with parents so that they could support their learners at home. We provided little cards for them to cut out with the sounds that they were learning in those weeks and showed them strategies to help their child blend. It is important to provide a lot of opportunities for learners to practice reading and writing through play. I have a portable writing box that learners can take anywhere around the classroom. In the photos, you can see learners love to use the box for making their own bingo games using their sounds and words. They use their sounds to write stories and make their own books to read to the class, writing menus for the other children to choose what they would like for lunch. Learners record this learning on Seesaw, and if I spot any learners using literacy in their play, I also record moments like these. This is a child using the read, write, ink strategies to teach her Teddy how to do Fred in your head. All observations are recorded, and I can look on Seesaw and change the play to adapt to the child's interests. Towards the end of Primary 1 and in Primary 2, I try to provide writing opportunities in all the areas. For example, in block play, drawing and writing about what they are building. Story corner, writing a book review. Writing templates and word mats on the writing table. Whiteboards and writing resources are available for all the learners to use at any time. Also, I provide provocations within the classroom. For example, here you can see a beanstalk has magically appeared in the classroom. This sparks conversation and children like to write about how it got there. Also, Miss Hunter loses her voice quite a lot. The children love to write about how I've lost my voice and where they think it's went. Play has allowed my learners to engage in dialogue with peers, learn from one another, and share skills, ideas, and challenge their thinking within a community of learners. This has been evident through play observations and teaching tasks. I am able to record learners' interests and conversations through a floorbook approach, which I have found has encouraged learners to talk about their learning and challenge them to further their knowledge. Through observations, I am able to set the learners effective targets through top tasks, jigsaw grids, and challenges. These are designed to allow learners to build up their independence and organise their time. I am able to adopt effective targets to meet the needs of the learners and link to prior learning. Here is why some of our learners think we should have play in schools.
Play helps us learn and helps us with telling the time because you can play with the clocks. You can read, write, and you can draw to help you learn with your writing skills.
And where can you post your learning?